The night market on Delta 4 was alive with light and noise. Neon signs glowed in pinks and blues, merchants shouted over one another, and the smell of roasted spice meat floated above the crowd. Chun kept his hood low as he moved through the stalls. He had been a soldier once, years ago, but now he was just another wanderer with scars he preferred hidden. He was tired of fighting. He was tired of blood. He wanted peace, even if peace meant silence, but peace never lasted. He saw her when the crowd shifted, a small figure pressed against a wall. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, marked with the pale ridges of a Zarkonian child. Her big eyes, glowing faint gold, were wide with fear. 3 men surrounded her humans, rough and desperate, knives in their hands. One of them hissed at her, "Give us the crystal, alien brat." She shook her head, trembling. "It is not mine to give?" Chun didn't think. His body moved before his mind caught up. He shoved through the crowd, his voice loud. "Leave her." The men turned, surprised, and sneered when they saw only one man standing against them. "Walk away, old soldier," one spat. "This isn't your business." But Chun had seen this too many times in too many wars. Children hunted because they were weak, because they had no one to defend them. He couldn't walk away. It is now. The first knife came fast. Chun blocked with his forearm, pain lancing as the blade scraped skin. He countered with a hard punch to the man's jaw, sending him sprawling. The second rushed in, slashing wildly. Chun twisted, grabbed his wrist, and slammed him against the wall. But the third drove forward, blade aimed low. Chun felt the stab tear into his side. White heat exploded in his vision, but he didn't stop. The girl screamed. They came at him together after that, furious, their knives flashing. Chun fought like he had sworn he never would again, every move brutal, every strike designed to end the threat quickly. He took another stab in the shoulder, then 2 more across his ribs. Blood soaked his shirt, hot and sticky, but still he pushed forward. He drove one man down with a knee, cracked another's skull against the edge of a stall, and hurled the third into a heap of crates. By the time the crowd dared breathe again, the attackers lay broken, groaning in pain, their knives scattered across the ground. Chun staggered, vision blurring. He counted the wounds 1, 2, 8 in total. 8 places where the knives had found him. His body screamed with pain, but he forced himself upright. The child was still there, pressed against the wall, shaking. He crouched slowly, his bloody hand open. "It's all right now. You're safe." She looked at him, tears catching in the glow of her eyes. "Why?" She whispered. Chun gave a weak smile, though his lips tasted of iron. "Because you are alone. And no one should be alone." Then the world tilted sideways and went dark. When Chun opened his eyes again, he wasn't on the dusty street. He was in a bright room, lying on a medical slab. The sharp scent of antiseptic stung his nose, and soft lights hummed overhead. His chest burned as if fire lived in every wound, but his body was whole stitched, clean, bandaged. He tried to rise, but firm hands pressed him down. "Easy," a voice said. "You shouldn't move yet." Chun blinked up and saw her the same Zarkonian child. Beside her stood a woman with sleek dark hair, dressed in the silver-lined armor of the Zarkon Guard. Her eyes were cold steel, her stance the stance of a warrior. "You saved her," the woman said flatly, "and nearly killed yourself doing it." Chun swallowed, throat dry. "She's safe then?" The woman's expression didn't change. "Safe, for now. But you, human, you have made enemies. And you have drawn attention." She stepped aside, and Chun's stomach dropped. 4 soldiers in full armor filled the doorway, rifles slung across their chests, eyes hard as stone, Elite, not mercenaries, not city guard. These were soldiers bred for war. Their leader, a tall man with pale scars across his jaw, studied Shen like he was a puzzle. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of command. 8 stab wounds for a child, he said. That is not something ordinary men do. So tell us, human, why would you risk your life for someone not your own? Chun tried to answer, but his voice failed. He looked at the child's golden eyes, wide and waiting, then at the soldiers who demanded something more than words. And he knew this was only the beginning. The room held the weight of silence, heavy as iron chains. Chun lay on the medical slab, his wounds bandaged but throbbing with every shallow breath. The 4 soldiers stood in the doorway, their black armor marked with the sigils of the Zircon Guard, their faces hard and unflinching. The one with the scar across his jaw stepped forward, his boots clicking sharply against the polished floor. The Zarkonian child clutched at the hem of the armored woman's tunic, her eyes wide with fear. Chun's voice was hoarse, but steady as he lifted his head slightly. You already know why I did it. She's a child. The scarred soldier narrowed his silver-gray eyes. Children of Zarkon are not your responsibility, human. So we ask again, why? Chun forced a bitter laugh that caught in his throat. Because I was there. Because no one else stepped forward. Isn't that enough? The soldier's jaw tightened. Behind him, another shifted uneasily, muttering in their tongue. The armored woman, Co Yeon, finally spoke, her voice sharp as tempered steel. You misunderstand. This is not gratitude. This is interrogation. The Zircon Guard does not believe in coincidence. She gestured to the child. Her name is Zex. She carries something far greater than she appears to, something enemies would kill for. You intervened now, you are part of it, whether you wish it or not. Chun tried to sit upright, pain tearing through his ribs, but he held her gaze. I didn't ask for this. I don't care what she carries. I saw 3 knives and a terrified little girl. That's it. Seo Yun's expression flickered, the faintest crack in her cold mask, before her lips hardened again. The scarred soldier leaned down until his shadow fell across Chun's face. You took 8 stab wounds. No mercenary, no common drifter would risk that for an alien child. So we must consider the possibility you were placed there. A spy, a plant. The accusation landed like a blow. Chun's eyes flared with defiance. You think I wanted this? 6 years I've wandered from colony to colony. I've lost friends, family, everything to war. Do you think I planned to bleed out on a market floor just to trick you? His voice cracked with raw exhaustion. I'm not a spy. I'm just tired of seeing innocents left to die. The words seemed to hang in the air, trembling with the raw honesty behind them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Zex, the child, stepped forward. Her small hand reached out, trembling, and touched Chun's bandaged wrist. He is telling the truth, she whispered. I felt it. When he stood in front of them, I felt no deceit. Only pain, only kindness. Her golden eyes turned to the soldiers, fierce despite her small frame. If you punish him, then you punish me, for I chose to trust him. The scarred soldier stiffened, clearly unsettled, while the others exchanged glances. Izio Yin's gaze softened as she looked at the child, then back at Chun. She has the gift of sense-reading, she murmured. Rare, but not impossible. If she says you are true, then perhaps you are. Still, the tension did not break. One of the soldiers spoke sharply. Commander Jung-hoon, we can't simply let this human walk free. Precedent demands we hold him until Jung-hoon, the scarred commander, raised a hand and cut him off. Enough. He will come with us. His eyes locked on Chun's, unyielding. If you are what you say, then you will prove it. If you are not, then your blood will stain our halls next." Chun exhaled slowly, his body aching, his mind still fogged with pain. He had hoped that by saving one child, he could walk away, slip back into his wandering life. But the fire in the girl's eyes, the soldier's suspicion, and the commander's words told him that choice was gone. His path had shifted. The Zircon guard would not let him vanish back into the shadows. As the soldiers hauled him to his feet, Chun's knees buckled, but he refused to collapse. He met Isio Yan's steady gaze, then looked down at Zex, who still clung to her protector. "Don't be afraid," he murmured, though he wasn't sure who he was saying it for her. Or himself. The armored escort moved in formation, as they guided him down a long corridor lined with bright sigils and alien banners. The air smelled of ozone, humming faintly with shield generators. Chun's mind spun with questions, but one rose above them all. Why would soldiers of this power be chasing a child in the first place? What was Zex carrying, hidden in her small hands or hidden within her blood, that drew knives and suspicion alike? He didn't know the answer yet, but he knew this. 8 stab wounds had tied him to her fate, and no interrogation, no suspicion. No alien soldier's glare would change that now. When they reached the end of the corridor, Yung Hoon pushed open the doors to a vast chamber glowing with pale light. In its center stood a throne-like seat carved from obsidian metal, and upon it sat a figure that made Chun's chest tighten. His skin was darker blue than Zex's, his armor etched with centuries of history, his eyes like cold stars. Zarkonian High Marshal Minjun, ruler of the Zircon Guard. His voice rolled across the chamber like distant thunder. "So, this is the human who bleeds for a child not his own." He leaned forward, studying Chun with interest that felt far sharper than suspicion. "Perhaps fate has brought you to us. Or perhaps it has brought us something far more dangerous." Without breaking stride in his speech, Marcus diverted the system's execution, fingers subtle against the console. Instead of bleeding his algorithms to some hidden receiver, the malicious subroutine carried his reverse trace, a trap he had planted days earlier. On the far edge of the hall, alarms shrieked. Security surged as Krell's operatives closed in on a group of cloaked figures, their devices sparking as Marcus's corrupted package fried them from within. Gasps and shouts filled the chamber, but Marcus's voice cut through, calm and clear. "This is the danger of secrecy. Sabotage thrives in shadow. But resilience adapts, resists, survives." His words silenced the chaos, and when Talon lifted a glass in toast, the hall thundered with applause, not just for the technology, but for the man who had delivered it unbroken by betrayal. Later, the celebration spilled into terraces overlooking the city, the lavender sky bleeding into night, while ribbons of air traffic glowed like arteries of light. Marcus stood at the glass rail, suit loosened, shoulders finally relaxing as Sela joined him. She handed him a document glowing faintly in her hands. "It's official," she said. "The Interspecies Cultural Exchange Committee has recognized our partnership. You and I, human and Luminian, the first to be sanctioned in law." He stared at it, wonder catching in his chest. "That was fast. I thought politics took years." Her silver eyes sparkled with quiet pride. "It helps when one partner saves an executive, exposes a conspiracy, thwarts sabotage, and revolutionizes navigation." He laughed, pulling her closer, her warmth grounding him against the enormity of it all. "What happens now?" he asked softly. She tilted her head against his shoulder. "That depends. What do you want, Marcus Blackwood?" He gazed out at the glittering city, remembering the rust-colored dunes, the silence, the fear of being erased. "I want to build something no one can bury," he said. "A foundation for stranded spacers, lost crews. No one should go through what I did, Forgotten. Sila's lips brushed his jaw as her fingers traced circles over his chest. The Blackwood Foundation, she murmured. It has a noble ring. He smiled, then grew serious, lifting her chin gently so her silver eyes met his. And I want this, us, whatever it takes to bridge our worlds. Her breath caught, but her answer was steady. Then we navigated together. The moment hung suspended, fragile and radiant, until Talon's approach broke it, his stride sure, his smile sharp. Enjoy your peace while it lasts, he said, handing Marcus a thin data slate. Its surface flickered with decrypted transmissions, lines of code Marcus recognized instantly. His pulse stumbled. It was his distress beacon, not unanswered, as he had believed for 6 years. Intercepted, logged, watched, his gaze snapped up, heart hammering. Someone received my signals. Talon's smile faded, replaced by grim certainty. Not just received, monitored. The astral confluence has factions older and darker than Prel. They left you there deliberately, Marcus. They wanted to see if a human could endure 6 years alone. The city lights glittered beneath them, but Marcus felt only the chill of the desert night clawing back into his bones. He had not been forgotten. He had been tested. His jaw tightened, a flare of defiance burning in his chest as he pulled Sila closer, her warmth anchoring him against the enormity of the revelation. Then let them watch, he said quietly, the words a promise forged of survival and fury. Because I'm still here. And as the lavender night closed around the spires of Luminia Prime, Marcus Blackwood understood his story was only just beginning. But outside the walls, enemies still moved. Somewhere, hidden in the city's veins, the men who had stabbed him were reporting back, and others were already plotting. And in the guard itself, there were those who wanted him silenced before his presence unraveled more than just their laws. As the door shut, Sean's last thought before sleep was bitter and sharp. 8 stab wounds had brought him here, but survival of the right had placed him in the middle of a war he still didn't understand. The city of Zircon burned with light as the night fell, spires glowing like molten glass, shadows stretching across wide avenues where armored patrols stalked in silence. From the chamber where Chun rested, the hum of alien machinery was constant, but beneath it he could feel the pulse of danger. Betrayal lingered in the air like smoke. He had passed their ancient rite, bled until even the hardest soldiers whispered his name, but victory was fragile. Somewhere within these walls, someone wanted him gone. Seo Yan stood by the door, her posture rigid, her silver eyes scanning every movement of the guards. They whisper you're chosen, she said softly, almost as if it angered her. But others whisper you're a threat. Chun pulled himself upright, every muscle aching, his bandages stiff with dried blood. Let me guess both are true. Before she could answer, the door slid open. Jung Hoon entered, flanked by 2 soldiers, his scar catching the glow of the room's pale lights. His expression was a mask of authority, but his clenched jaw betrayed something darker. The High Marshal summons us, he announced. The Council has discovered a leak. The ones who attacked the girl in the market, mercenaries tied to factions outside our borders, were tipped off by someone within the guard. Chun felt a chill trace his spine. The betrayal was no longer a shadow. It was here. Seo Yin's eyes narrowed. And you already know who, she said, her voice sharp. Jung Hoon didn't reply, but his silence was damning. They marched through twisting corridors until they entered a council chamber, smaller than the great hall, but dense with tension. Min Jun stood at the head of the table, his presence heavy as stone. Zek sat beside him, clutching the crystal box with the heart fragment inside. Her golden eyes flicked nervously to Chun when he entered, but she didn't speak. Around the table, officers muttered like restless crows. The traitor has been found, Min Jun said, his voice steady. Evidence points to Director Zarkon Shinar, keeper of our navigation archives. A tall officer stood, his robes heavy with insignia, his face pale with fury. Lies? He spat. This is a plot to frame me. I have served the guard for decades. But Min Jun raised a hand, and Krell, the security chief, stepped forward with a holographic display. Records of encrypted transmissions flashed, marked with Chinar's seal, linking him to the mercenary syndicate. The chamber erupted in shouts in the chaos. Chun's sharp instincts caught movement one of the guards, shifting too close to Zex, his hand inching toward the box. Without thinking, Chun lunged forward, ignoring the pain that flared through his chest. He slammed the soldier back just as a hidden blade snapped from the man's wrist. Gasps echoed as the guard hit the floor, snarling in a foreign tongue. Jung-hoon reacted instantly, dragging the man up by his collar. Under the glow of the chamber's light, his armor shimmered, revealing markings not of the guard, but of the mercenary faction. An infiltrator. Another betrayal, deeper than before. Min Jun's voice thundered over the uproar. So it is true. They have wormed into our ranks. His gaze turned to Chun, who knelt beside the child, shielding her without hesitation. And yet again, the human saves what we could not protect. Chun gritted his teeth, still holding Zex close. She's a child, he said again, his voice raw. You guard artifacts, laws, and secrets, but who guards her? Silence fell like a blade. Zex's small hand clutched his sleeve, and in that moment the chamber seemed to shift. The High Marshal straightened, his gaze sweeping the council. This human has bled for our heir, stood against illusions, spoken truth when lies would have been easier, endured fire where even Zircon warriors fall. Twice he has uncovered betrayal where our own eyes failed. He is no spy. He is what we lack, a reminder that honor is more than ritual. He turned to Chun. You will not be dismissed. From this day, you are named Protector of the Zarkonian Heir. You answer only to me. Jung-hoon's jaw tightened, torn between resentment and reluctant respect. Seo Yeon bowed her head slightly, her eyes meeting Chun's with a spark of approval. Chun felt the weight of the words settle heavy on his shoulders. Heavier even than the knives that had nearly killed him. Protector. Not a role he had chosen, but one carved into him by blood and fire. Later, as the chamber emptied and the council dissolved into hushed arguments, Chun stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The spires glowed in the night, rivers of light winding through the streets like veins of a living creature. Zex stood beside him, small and quiet, her hand clutching his. They trust you now, she whispered. Chun shook his head faintly. Trust isn't given that easily. Some of them will never accept me. He glanced down at her, at the box she still carried. But I don't care, as long as you're safe. Her golden eyes lifted to his, steady despite her youth. You saved me when no one else would. That is enough. Seo Yeon approached from the shadows, her steps quiet. She is right, she said softly. What you've done will echo through our people. Whether you wanted it or not, your fate is tied to hers. Chun looked back out at the city, the wind cold against his face, and allowed himself a bitter smile. 6 years ago, he had feared dying forgotten on some barren world. Now his name was whispered in halls of power, his choices altering the future of a people not his own. 8 stab wounds had not ended him. They had made him.